When I was 28 years old, I lost what I call my spark. It started when I was only married about 3 years. I was finishing up my OBGYN residency, and the first thing that really started to go was my sex drive. I just felt like I had no urge to have sex. And, of course, I was doing it out of obligation, guilt, or avoiding it whenever possible, saying I had a headache or a stomach ache. And it was really an issue, but it was like the elephant in the room. It was the thing we weren't discussing. And on vacation one time, which was normally a time for us where we really got closer and more intimate, we were trying to get intimate, and it was just so awkward, and it wasn't working. And my husband finally stopped and just said, "What is wrong with you? Don't you love me anymore? Aren't you attracted to me anymore?" And I just looked at him. I said, nothing could be further from the truth. I love you so much, but it's me. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. And the worst part was I had no idea what it was. Even as an OBGYN, I hadn't learned anything that was helping me to figure out what the problem was. Because of course I knew I had a problem. I'd known for a while, but this really brought it to my attention. But I had no idea what to do. So we just kind of kept going, because what do you do? And, kept doing the same thing, having, sex sometimes out of guilt and whatever, and trying to get through. And of course, eventually I got pregnant and had my son, Jonathan, who is awesome. But at the time, I just became more and more exhausted. Even once my baby started to sleep through the night and I was getting plenty of sleep, I was just tired all the time. Even after a full night of sleep, I was exhausted when I would wake up in the morning, and I was exhausted all the time and just sleeping all the time. And it was awful because my husband had to play with the baby, and basically he was raising him because I was either working or I was sleeping. And I felt terrible. I felt like a terrible mom, and I felt so guilty about it. And it was really kind of terrible. And things for me, though, had always been good. There was one area of my life where I felt like things were always really good, at work. And that was where I really enjoyed the challenge and the adrenaline rush, especially getting called into the hospital to save the day. But there was this one particular time where I got called in the middle of the night for an emergency cesarean section, and rushing to the hospital, driving, gripping the steering wheel. I was gripped by this fear. What if I didn't make it to the hospital in time? What if the baby died while I was on my way? And what if after the baby died, what if I got sued? And what if I got sued and I lost my house? I had myself freaking homeless before I even got to the hospital. And it was terrible. Luckily, I got to the hospital. I got the baby out. Everything was fine. Mom and baby did really well. But the thing I'll never forget is that afterwards, I laid my head down on the desk at the nurse's station, and I just bawled like a baby because I had hit rock bottom. I realized that my life was just turned upside down. I was feeling guilty about being a terrible wife because I didn't want to have sex. And I felt like a terrible mom because I had no energy to be with my son. And I felt like a terrible doctor because I felt like I'd lost my nerve and I couldn't do what I used to do. And I felt like I didn't know what would happen. Would I lose my husband, my family, my career? And how was I going to get out of this mess? Because here I am, a doctor, and I have no idea what's wrong with me, how to fix myself. Of course, I'd done some tests, looking at my thyroid, looking at whether I was anemic, and nothing. Everything was normal. I couldn't figure it out. And that was when I really had to start looking for answers, and I really had to change my lifestyle. I stopped practicing OB, and I started studying. I started studying regenerative medicine and anti-aging medicine and functional medicine. Started learning more about nutrition, what I was eating and how that was affecting me. And I started to learn about bioidentical hormones. I learned stuff about hormones that I never learned as an OBGYN. And the stuff I learned led me to, number one, find out that birth control pills were a really big part of why I lost my spark. Birth control pills can kill your hormone testosterone. And testosterone is great for women, for their moods, for their energy, for memory and focus. And all of those things were gone, but I had no idea why. And the pill was a really big part of it. But of course, it's never just one thing, really. So stress was another really big part of it. I had a lot of stress going on in my life, and I wasn't managing it well. And nutrition was another huge part of it. I started to put all these pieces together, and things just started to get so much better from there. And I started to really get my energy back and get my groove back on, if you know what I mean. And I became the kind of mom I wanted to be, and the kind of wife I wanted to be, and the kind of doctor I wanted to be. Now, I'm not saying every day is perfect, because of course it's not, and there are times when I still get tired and exhausted. But you know what? I know how to get myself back on track now, and I know how to do it quickly. And that has just been a lifesaver for me. And I've taught it now to hundreds and hundreds of patients. And they tell me that I've literally saved their life. And you can't imagine how rewarding that is. I was afraid when I left being an obstetrician that I would never have that kind of satisfaction in my work life again. But now when patients tell me how I've transformed their lives and changed their lives, I get that same satisfaction being the doctor who did that for them. And I love that. And that's what I want to do for you. I want to help you transform your life. I was married only 3 years when I lost my sex drive, and I had no idea what was going on with me. It scared me. I was scared that I might lose my husband. I might lose my marriage. If I didn't if I didn't want to have sex, was he going to go find somebody else to have sex with? And I had no idea what was wrong with me, which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about telling women what birth control pills might be doing to them, because I don't want you to have to suffer like I did and not knowing and worrying. Losing my sex drive was just the first part of my problems. It's what I look back on and call now losing my spark. So I didn't know what to do about my sex drive, but I was lucky. My husband hung in there with me, and eventually we got pregnant. I had a baby, and even though when he started sleeping through the night, and I was sleeping through the night, I was exhausted. I just never got my energy back, and I was more and more tired, and I felt awful because I wasn't able to take care of my own baby, really. I would spend every minute that I could sleeping, and my husband was off trying to take care of our baby. I felt so guilty. I felt like I was a terrible mommy. So here I was not having enough sex and feeling like a guilty wife, and now I'm feeling exhausted all the time, and I'm feeling like a bad mom. And finally, the last thing to go was my ability to deal with stress, and that really started to affect me at work. I'll never forget this one particular night. I had to race in to do an emergency C-section, and everything turned out okay, but I'll never forget afterwards lying my head down on the desk on the nurse's station and just bawling, crying so hard because I knew that something was really wrong with my life. I didn't want to have sex. I felt like a bad wife. I didn't have enough energy to play with my son, so I felt like a bad mom. And then I realized I wasn't able to handle the stress anymore of being an OB, of running into the hospital and taking care of the emergencies. And that was one of the things that I had always loved. I had no idea what was wrong with me and no idea where to turn, and couldn't imagine what I was going to do because it just seemed like things were going further and further downhill. So I gave up practicing OB. I stopped delivering babies at night and all of that. I stopped doing operations. I stopped going into the operating room. And that's when I started to look for answers. And I was lucky enough to find the Fellowship for Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine. And I started this whole course of study where I started to learn all kinds of things about hormones that I never learned as an OBGYN. Really surprised me. Started to learn things about nutrition and what things I was eating that were wrong, what things I could eat that were right, that were going to give me back my energy, help me handle stress better. I started to learn about supplements and what supplements I needed to support everything that I wanted to do in my life. And I started to learn how to use hormones to improve my sex drive, to improve my energy. This was the birth of my passion for holistic medicine. It's why I'm doing this show,
And it's why I'm so passionate about helping people like you. I want this show to help you live a longer and healthier life. It wasn't till I was at the bottom health-wise that I found my solutions. And I was a doctor. Ever since that moment, I have dedicated my life to learning everything that I can about how to make you live a healthier and longer life. The great thing is that when you're healthier, you feel better about life. It's easier to be a great mom, a great wife, and to balance everything that you have to do. If you don't feel good, there's no way you can take care of everything that women have to take care of these days. We've all heard the expression, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And if I can make moms happier and healthier, women control the health care of their family. And if a woman is healthier, her family is going to be healthier. And if she's healthier, she's going to be happier. And her whole family is going to be happier. And that's really, to me, what this is all about. I want people to be healthier, happier, and live longer. Because there's no use in living longer if you're not feeling happy and healthy. About 3 years ago, I was really ready to divorce Adam. We were fighting all the time, and it was so stressful for me that the stress was just exhausting me. It was like wearing me out. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not why I started practicing this medicine, because I was already practicing this medicine, but despite doing my best to take care of myself and practicing this medicine, that insane stress was just taking its toll on me. And it got to the point where I didn't know how to fix it, and I felt like I was just ready to give up. We had been in couples therapy for probably 2 years with a therapist that didn't seem to be getting us anywhere. If anything, I think things were maybe getting worse. And it wasn't until I finally decided to go to another therapist to figure out how I was going to deal with getting divorced, how I was going to individually deal with my kids and finances and just getting through the whole thing. And I guess I was really still in the decision process, should I get divorced? And, trying to figure out what the right thing to do for me was. And this woman, a marital and family therapist, she changed my outlook on everything. It was unbelievable. Every time I told her all the jerky things I felt like my husband was doing and all the things that I felt Adam was doing wrong, she kept coming back to me and saying, but what about you? What about you? And I think that was my whole problem in my relationship, that I didn't acknowledge that I had any role in doing anything wrong, so to speak. I felt like I was doing everything right. And what I finally learned was I was actually doing too much right. Being a healer and just being a woman, we tend to take on a lot in our lives of nurturing the people around us. She kept asking me, what about me? And she slowly and gently pointed out to me that my problem was I was doing too much and I was controlling. And I kept saying to her, what? I'm controlling? No. And she said, yeah, what I was doing was trying to control the outcome for everybody in my family. I was trying to be the peacekeeper. I was trying to make sure everybody was doing okay. So anytime anything would happen, I would intervene, so that I always felt like I was on a tightrope or walking on eggshells and just trying to hold everybody together, everybody's mood, and make sure everybody was okay. And especially Adam, my husband, I was really taking a lot of responsibility for his mood. So if he was upset, I always wanted to know what I had done wrong or what I could do to fix it. And if I couldn't fix it, I would feel like I failed. And obviously this was all really stressful for me. And the thing that I wasn't doing was I wasn't setting good boundaries. I wasn't taking responsibility for what was mine, but leaving responsibility for what was somebody else's with them. And the biggest thing that I learned was when resentment is high, which I definitely had a lot of resentment, then self-care is low. And that's something I always remember to this day, because when I'm feeling resentful, it's likely that I'm not taking good enough care of myself, not setting boundaries, not maintaining boundaries. and doing things that people could and should be doing for themselves, and probably doing things I don't want to be doing. And all of those things make me resentful, and they make me mean and nasty, and they make me super stressed. And all of that makes me exhausted, right? It sounds exhausting just talking about it. And I remember how exhausted I was at the time. And the only thing that really kept me sane and safe through that whole time was staying on my exercise regimen, eating the way that I always tell people to eat, trying to do some stress meditation relief techniques and things like that. But it was really getting to me, and it was getting to me so bad that I almost lost my marriage. And because I was able to, I think because I was able to maintain my health during the time, I was ready for that stressful time in my life. I was ready to deal with the emotions to get me through that really tough time in my marriage, to get me through to the point where now we actually started seeing the new therapist together, and things have never been better in our relationship. We just celebrated our 20-year anniversary, and we don't have much stress anymore. Yeah, of course we fight now and then, but you know what? We even learned to do that better. We learned strategies to fight better, and it's so much less stressful on not only on me, but on my whole family, on my kids, and on Adam. And we all feel better, and having my health in place and now having my relationship on a better track, I have more energy than ever. I have more energy now at 46 than I did at 25.